Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Mars, our Saturn night. And the ascendant is right with Chiron and Aries. Moon is applying to Jupiter at 13 degrees Cancer. We can call on Sirius. In fact, um, I will bring my Sirius butter talisman into the mix. And this is a message that I have been trying to deliver for quite a while and did not find the words. Um, there is an atmosphere when it comes to souls living off of other souls, treason-based society to do it, pervading almost every profession. It began with the lifting of the veil where each and every business had to have a platform and be a celebrity by choice or not by choice. And for some people, even if like me, astrologers, where you would have to have a platform, and then some people could take their innate, for some people it's innate star qualities, or innate celebrity qualities, or innate public figure qualities, or inner child coming to the forefront qualities, and that allowed an awakening of the senses and the lifting of the veil, but also a dissolution between the world that was belonging to certain bloodlines in certain very secretive society and rites, undergoing immense pressure that the world was not exposed to. Um, and the word MK Ultra comes to mind, and that's okay. Now, because of that, and it's actually because society has been changing, because certain hierarchies have been dissolving, because the common people deal with what the secluded people dealt with, and the secluded people open up to the common people. So there is a certain rapport and connection, but also the life structures of soul living off of other souls is going to bifurcate, which can bring losses. And another thing that's been happening in the collective, that for some years, even a decade or decades, people have been tapping into their divine masculine, their divine feminine, combining whether they're straight or gay, questioning, what is their sovereign sensuality, questioning what do they orgasm about, connecting their nervous system to what do they consume, whether it's food, whether it's eroticism, um, and learning how to communicate. There's been a lot that has been revolutionizing relations, and I think Uranus at the end of Taurus is going to bring the final go on the Venusian Uranus. And when it comes to the relational collective, the romantic collective, the sensual collective, um, the final things that are stepping in between, um, being in those divine unions, having that tantric sexual connection, something that is very basic. You think about it on another existential level, a house, a place to stay, is the basis of the basis of the basis of the basis. The majority of humanity does not have that, even those that think they do. And when I talk about the what people call tantric connection, it basically means a sensual union, a relational union of people that are willingly there with one another, is considered something that is a sacred teaching brought to the Egyptians about how to balance feminine and masculine energy. Because that's the craziness that the world's been in, but that's not what what we're supposed to be about. And people talk about it in terms of the age of Aquarius, in terms of this revolution or that revolution. I'm sorry, sex trafficking is not a sex liberation revolution, nor is it a feminist revolution. Um, and so the treason-based type of society, sexuality, the courtesan-partisan, where people were raped to loss of existence and then prided themselves on being able to have a sex without love, considering that sexual liberation, to the supposed patriarchal structure which necessitated gay rape and rape of children. And this is how LGBTQ got associated with pedophilia to begin with, and some of the fact that certain gender types were subjected to ritual abuse, so much so that it is even confusing whether those gender types or non-conventional gender types, straight or gay, are the result of the abuse or the original gender. Um, Okay, and naturally that doesn't apply to everyone. Some people can have an innate knowing, or some people not may not even know themselves when it comes to sexual attractions. Like, oh, that's I like penis, I like vagina, and so on and so forth. Like that can be actually a grounding for some people. So it can bifurcate in all kinds of ways. Um, but when it comes to actually relaxing into the right type of relation. For some people, it's the right type of career. For some people, it's the right type of living circumstances, whatever. But relaxing into the right environment, the right partners, um, the right type of careers is something that genuinely has not existed in the world. It existed in a drug-induced, uh, Epstein-like circumvention of energies that photograph themselves by souls living on other souls as if something is. And the emotions could have been real to the moment of that phase of the personality coming to the forefront. But what we didn't have is the relation, straight or gay, that have actually been relaxing into the divine union. And again, this is speaking for the collective. There are always going to be the Goodell points of people that hold that divine union and are like a point of attraction for humanity to pivot around until they balance their own chaos, politically, currency wise, housing wise, secret society wise, um, occult wise. And this is why many, 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 many people have been in a band-aid type of relations. And this is important to be graceful, where the healing that people have with people is not to be discounted, and yet the healing relationship is not always the aligned relationship. Okay, for example, a person that has had mother wounds may be attracted to a woman who is like a caregiver, and she might really want to become a mom. And then she cares for her man, then she brings a child and she cares for a child, and suddenly she has a sexual awakening, or the practices that she made to bring a child, whether it's orgasmic birth, or I don't know, those jade egg stuff, or tantric union, all these things where she began to relax into her femininity. Then perhaps before that, she was like, hey, are you committed? Are you not committed? We're gonna have a baby, and so on. This is the story of so many couples. Okay, even with the gender reversal in the same gender. Okay, you can replace the bringing a child with having another person or a third party that's assisting in that. Um, But that can be kind of like, think about the woman kind of like, hey, are you committed? Are you not committed? Can I grow a child with you? Can I keep a secret with you? Can I grow a business? Can I be equal to you? Can I this? Can I that? And really pressuring on the person to kind of prove they're being committed. When she finally relaxes into the orgasmic birth experience, manifests a lover that cares for her like the man provider that her man may have been with other men or women, okay, um, or a person that can be the provider, the caregiver, the man for for a straight woman, and then rediscover an essence in himself that's kind of like, but I want to be the girl, okay, and that's absolutely okay. It can express itself in a healthy form in non-monogamy and so on and so forth. But because people have not been able to relax into their true selves due to MK Ultra like projects that affect the income, that affect the ability to make a living, that affect the ability to live in a house, that affect our dating world. Even when we cross the courtesan cartesan, we go into the spirit and matter balancing, balancing our kundalini energy, wanting to create trust, and boom, Peter rings, Daedler, Epstein, tariffs, financial crisis, Arctic meetings, all these things that come to the forefront. Don't forget that we've spent a decade and something trying to discern or reach to our own sensual essence or romantic essence, or open our heart chakra, or for some people it might be even a gut disease that they were treating, or okay, and it's kind of like you work, you make this rigorous massive action to resolve the situation, and then boom, all of these leaking things coming out of your past, like this wound that was an inflammatory wound that you pop, and like all the goo comes out of your entire life, basically, that kept you from having that trust. But now you stare into the face of that goo, and that goo might be a person that may be a karmic or not karmic partner, or an opponent that you're forced to, not forced to, but you're juxtaposed to, and there is something that brings in the past to heal, basically, to be resolved, to have those things that have been keeping people from actually having loving relations dissolve. But that goo might be, for some people, that their dissociative identity participated in trafficking. That, okay, it might be very, very heavy topics, um, that and yet maybe some people thought that they could give up on or repress their desire to have that union, or for some people it may have to do with children. And this is why, for the most of the collective are not in the right relations for them. Even the relations that separated during COVID or during the past kind of like half a decade, around social engineering, and some of those were really messy, particularly when Uranus, it was Sedna meeting Algol in COVID, and then Uranus made steps towards Sedna, and it was yucky, okay? It was really, really challenging. It was not the usual separation or divorce. It was a separation or divorce on the background of, well, that person was a child sex offender, or that person ran a Peter ring, that person, it is kind of like those really deep topics. Okay. Um, or people coming together, and for some of the people that are coming together, there may even be the buds of the beginning of the right direction. So maybe people that have had always been the provider, because of a wound and not because it's their true essence, actually begin to learn how to receive. So they begin to attract people that are more, that are supposed to be the providers, but they need to step into their provider. And and that can create a lot of dissolutions. Um, and for some people, the buds of the actual unions may begin form, where for others, it's kind of like you begin to get the trajectory, but now you're exposed to the fact that, hey, I can't relax into the person. Like, hey, a person's supposedly coming to provide for me, we can't relax into each other. What's in the way? Espionage, Peter Rings, extortion calls, having to vouch for them legally, okay, having to not talk about certain things, not really, okay, it's those things that are really coming up to the forefront, and they are really, they are the things that keep people from being able to relax into the what people call the divine union, or the correct union for them, where they can actually be happy and thriving. And happy and thriving is a love that's actually loving. It's not tradwife. It's not courtesan partisan. It's not we have good sex together, but we don't support each other's goals and dreams. It's not okay. It's not. It's none of that. It's body, heart, mind, and soul, and something that we grew up in a very enslaved humanity that sees that as something that can be for a chosen few, but those chosen few are not even the elites. Like, nobody, from the royalty to the commoners, nobody actually had a love that is actually loving in this life. Particularly not when we combine romance and eroticism to it, where people were born into a rape, ritual rape based courtesan partisan division. And that altered their beliefs. Okay, that altered their beliefs. They became, and that can, at the same time, spark situations where something that began as totally lustful, or something that began as something that looks like an obsession, or something that begins as, I'm not sure I'm even on the right vibe with this person, can find a very um, unusual and sometimes even quite toxic way of expressing itself, because something is breaking. What is lust? Is something that is like a liminal block that is being removed, so a person can reconnect with the heart. Something being touching on the heart, but it's expressing itself as this obsessive sexual energy that doesn't climb up the chakras. Because to get to the heart, they have to face for what the things that are keeping that from being. And with those rituals, a lot of people that had to behave to their loved ones in a very treason way. And this is why we have such a huge trajectory of both people talking about divine masculine, divine feminine, tantric union, and talking about the all the other aspects of, like, hey, that's not how, that's a player energy, that's a this, that's a that. What is going on here? This person not out of the closet, yes, out of the closet. This is um, kind of a general upheaval that happens, where um, where the fact that people not have a love that is actually loving has came to a certain threshold, and the threshold is being crossed. We're going to see that a lot with Uranus going through the final degrees of Taurus. I hold, light a candle for the people that have a midheaven or a prominent placement. Melania Trump has Venus there, um, and she been on the news, like the Epstein story. Okay, she been on the news, like things coming up and out of her control, but exposing something very deep and very dark. Um, regarding that, there being, Donald Trump has midheaven around these points, and I know two more midheavens of prominent figures around this point. Um, those are degrees that some of them may have to do with homosexuality. Some of them may have to do with Epstein-like scandals. It's the degrees of Taurus where we balance spirit and matter. If you think about the courtesan-cartisan division, how it may affect it, even marital life or marital choices, policies. Okay, not everybody is able to live in traditional family values. Um, and yes, for people with prominent placements on the last 3 to 5 degrees of Taurus, and Scorpio and Leo and Aquarius are going to really feel that Uranus, um, going back into the final degrees of Taurus and then coming back to Gemini, um, making the final Kundalini rise and release of the relations that no longer serve. And that is a call for an actually the love that is actually loving on all levels of being: romantic love, sexual love, erotic love, agape love, um, all, the real deal type of thing. And there's no getting away of all these things that were blocking that, from the Vatican to Opus Dei to Epstein to intelligence to politics to um, Rolodex to the handlers behind the people that were in the Epstein rings, to the dissociative identity disorder, to the technologies of surveillance. Everything. It's kind of like humanity is lifting the veil, saying, hey, we want love that's actually loving. Everything that's not is allowed to perish. And that is going to have tremendous implications. We already see, with Melania Trump having Venus on this point, and Donald Trump having a midheaven next to those degrees, how the Epstein ring has been having a complete new phase of that. Um, and there's more to the mix. There's definitely more to the mix. The eclipses of September may have to do with that. So I'm gonna take a slight peek at the upcoming September. Because this is where we feel the stagnation. We've been doing a humongous amount of shadow work, taking responsibility, taking the initiative, taking rigorous steps, being persistent in those rigorous steps. And for some people, it may express themselves as they've been healing a gut syndrome or a gut disorder, and then they've been healing and healing. Then it's like, well, you need to actually nourish yourself. Well, I can't actually afford food. Good morning. That's why you got sick. Okay. I can't actually afford food because I need to choose between paying the rent and paying for my food. Wait a second, I don't only want to spend money on food. There are things I want to grow business, I want to travel, I want to live, and I have to crunch it into something that's not really comprising. And each and every job is kind of like it's an informant job. It's not even a job, and that is going to express itself in full force and in full form with the eclipses in Virgo. Okay, there's a lot of emotional release, a lot of holistic perspective. Okay, about what's been holding us back, the toxins in our body, um, things that we were told are good for us but are not. Uranus will already be retrograde at this point. It's not going to go into Taurus just yet, but it's the beginning of the grand purging of like, hey, things can no longer be in that way. No, we cannot have those thriving, happy union relationships that we've been striving for, nor can we give those up. Whether it's a union or relationship, or actually being satisfied and happy with our careers, or and it all comes down to a love that is actually loving, whether it's a love for for humanity that drives us to do certain projects, or whether it's a love for our loved ones, or a love for where people want to be parents and so on. All of these things, we can't really give them up. We can't really live a life of something that's fragmented and not be on the verge of suicide, as a societal murder, or even in life risk, whether it's by disease or by assassination cults or by suicide cults. Yeah, we're just like, either we're gonna live or we're gonna die. But we can't give up life being alive. And the practices of living off of other souls, um, is one of these bubble pops. It is no doing away with the fragmentation. There's no doing away with the fragmentation. Uranus is going to cross all the way through Taurus. No doing, the fragmentation doesn't hold waters. It is not accommodating for life. And this is the why and how people start taking action, speaking truth to power. They're not going to do with those constraints. And they're not going to do with all those tactics that are meant to keep them struggling for the tiny bit. This has crossed the threshold on a mass world, global level. The entire humanity has had enough of having enough. So, for many of you, whether it's divorces, whether it's relationships, whether it's I don't know what, the fragmentation is not gonna do. Uranus is going to go through a Venus sign. Okay, it's the last degrees of a Venus sign, and we can't really complete Uranus in Taurus with this fragmentation around relations, sensuality, union, connection, artistic expression, expressing our truth, music, singing. What's been done to the feminine, gay or straight. And there's just no amount of trying to pivot around that. If you think about it, 2018 Uranus ingressed into Taurus. Okay, it went through Aries, liberating people's identities. Okay, people began to talk about the connection between sexual boundary violation and dissociative identity disorder. People began to have expression purges that were very public, and there was no amount of silence. That's how the Me Too began, by the way. It was not possible to silence these people without these people either committing a murder or committing a suicide. And the Me Too was a way to alleviate and include that discourse without getting to the tipping point. Then Uranus ingressed into Taurus. because Uranus in Aries was about identity, was about the I am, and people got at their identity, at the essence of identity, and they found, wait, the dissociation has to do with sexual boundary violation. That needs to be purged. And the reason these purges were public is because of the reasons that the dissociation was created in MK Ultra like settings. Um, and so Uranus in Taurus was already working on reigniting the sensuality, releasing the Kundalini energy, not reconnecting with identity per se, but reconnecting with the sensuality, embodiment, the things that are essential to the I am. The courtesan cartisan division not working anymore. And then OnlyFans was exposed, and Epstein was exposed, and the role of that in the White House was exposed, and everything that prevents embodiment. And you can't, when people, let's say a person lives someplace and they say, well, the water bill is too big. So they go online and they say, okay, people did half moons and they forested the Sahara. Let's do that in the backyard. Or let's do that on a plot of land. And you can't really, if you do something about them doing that, you already exposed that you're acting from motives that are to enslave humanity. Okay, when you're doing something that has a reason, oh, there's a problem with the water, let's innovate around that, and without having to plant anything or to water anything, change the soil to the way that it brings in the water and preserve the water so the natural things that grew in that soil begin to regrow, and we can grow food forest that way. We can forest the Sahara that way. You can't really limit the people that do that without exposing that you are acting again, that you are basically a part of a war crime with all the lethality that that entails. And so that was the guerrilla gardening, okay? Um, it's no, the things that used to be like, these are the rules, not gonna go anymore. The convoys, the police that joined the protesters in COVID, the entire world going through the same doctors that tell them, but how do you know that this is from the medicine? Um, Nobody buys that anymore. And now Uranus is in Gemini, um, arising all type of things, conjoining Sedna, but it still hasn't gone through Taurus. And so that relaxation into the divine union and all the things that people have been taking rigorous action to heal. Okay, whereas the people that been working, I don't know, with the jade egg and had a case of childhood sexual trauma in the family, going through years of just being able to put something to touch their own genitals and take a deep breath. People not being able to breathe because of grief, plagiarism, loss, sexual boundary violations, all very related to each other. Um, okay, the helplessness at the face of grief. Um, and so, can you imagine the fact that there are billions upon billions of people just working on being able to reconnect with their own senses for 7, 8 years? That's a huge trajectory. And that's a huge trajectory in the correct direction. Okay? It's not investing in the weapon industry and having those missiles from Iran dropping on you on your house, on the house next to you. It's taking the right steps at the right trajectory for years, billions upon billions of people doing that. They're not going to do with the things that come to constrict. Okay, so the old structure of souls living off of other souls, slavery, because what is Uranus and Gemini doing? Abolishing slavery, abolishing child labor. Yes, Saturn is going to be co-present with that Uranus. Okay, so what we see is that people have come to the place, and I remember I particularly saw an article where a woman had her child hurt by someone, and that someone didn't stop harassing her child, and that woman did not know what to do, and she ended up burning the perpetrator to death, of course, um, simply because not because she wanted revenge, she just wanted it to stop. Okay, so juxtapose what I said previously with that information and understand how many people will just no longer put up with those realities. They're not going to be doing with that, um, you know, and it's gonna go like one way or the other. This souls living off of other souls thing is not sustainable. And with Uranus in Taurus, on the axis of Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, with Pluto in the beginning degrees of Aquarius and that trine with Pluto, and Pluto is out of bounds. It's going to be out of bounds until 2035. So people are also, when they strive for being actually for a life that is actually living, they're not going to settle for not living life. And living life is not living off of other souls. It's not violating the essence of the desire to live in other people for all that that entails. And so this is why a lot of people are in the wrong relationships with outdated um, loyalties, and it's very likely going to be the same people that pushed for a certain type of commitment that are going to suddenly find that what they were looking for is coming from a different place. They might have an ego death in the process, because they wouldn't necessarily be expecting where is the desire that is closer to the love that is actually loving, actually meeting itself. And yet to have that love that is actually loving, there are things that people won't be able to compromise anymore. Okay, think about that person that was looking for, the woman that would cater to his needs and this and that, kind of be like a trad wife that they can lean back on, and that woman's not oriented in that way. Okay, this is not going to be. It's going to go one way or the other. And so all those situations to try to constrain people into certain type of life, this is not just not it. They're going to be met with such fierce, it's not even objection or resistance, but alignment and truth, that people are going to even surprise themselves about those alignments and those truths. and there's going to be an overall global situation where people are going to, in actions or in other means of speech, say, if you can't accommodate for me living, then bring me death that is with dignity. Like, hey, if you can't accommodate for, if this world cannot accommodate for life, okay, then the death should be death with dignity. This souls living off of other souls and this whole kind of, you know, something that's not even something, there's just no. And that meets the trajectory that where there's just not going to be appeasing of the people that are going to stand 10 toes down and say, hey, if I am alive, I should be alive. There is no rational excuse to limit my rights, to limit my life, to limit my well being. And people are going to get like, okay, if it's not life, then okay, then death. And this was what exposes the fact that there are souls living on other souls. The fact that they don't want those people to die, because then, but they will have to deal one way or another. Either people are going to pass away, or they're going to call for an action that's going to turn things over in such a way it is not going to be possible to do the souls living off of other souls without the implications being so extreme. Because people already know. They've already done 7 years of Uranus in Taurus. They already know that they're worthy. They already know that them loving themselves is the way out of abuse, even if they are the abuser. They already know that they are entitled to dignity and that they're being able to respect boundaries entails that their boundaries are respected. That means no trafficking. No organ harvesting, no slavery, no child trafficking, no child labor. This sets the tone for Uranus in Gemini with Sedna on a global scale. And those that are not up to speed with that are just going to end up being like those men that are refugees in another country and everybody wants to deport them because they beat the wife. Okay? They're just gonna end like that with perhaps being deported.